Hi, I'm Kim. I'm at Woollahra Sailing Club, and I'm here today to show you how to rig a mirror dinghy. Now, all these boats are slightly different, so you might find that your boat is not quite the same as this one, but hopefully this video will at least give you the general principles and you'll be able to work out what to do with your boat. Now, the boat we're going to use today belongs to my friend Simon. As you can see, it's a classic wooden boat, and it's actually named Roger after the character from Swallows and Amazons. So we've set it up here at the club with all the things that we're going to need. You can see we have two sails, a jib and a mainsail, the boom, and you can see the main sheet at the end there, a mast, and you can see here that Rogers is made of aluminium, that can also be made of wood, and a yard, which in mirror terminology we call a gaff. Now, technically speaking, it's not actually a gaff, but it's in the class rules, so feel free to use that. You can also see we have a centreboard and a rudder and tiller. Now, instead of having a mast and a yard, some boats will actually have a single mast which is the same height as the mast and the yard put together. So we call this a Bermudan rig. Now, regardless of which type of mast you have, it's going to need 3 wires, which we call stays. There'll be one on each side called a side stay and one on the front called a forestay. Now, at the base of the mast, there's going to be a square plug. This needs to fit into a matching square hole on the hull called a mast step. Now, you need to be a little bit careful here because some boats will actually have 2 mast steps. There'll be one aft and one forward. You can see that the forward mast step on this boat has been filled in. Now, the reason for that is that if you have 2 usable mast steps, you also need to have 2 separate places to attach the stays. So if the mast is in the aft step, then the stays will attach about here, and if the mast is in the forward step, there should be a separate place to attach the stays about there. Now, if you use the wrong set of attachment points for the mast step you're using, then either the boom will be too low or the mast could fall down. Now, the first step for raising the mast is to make sure that the stays are attached. Now, I said every boat is different. This one's a little bit gnarlier than usual, so it has shackles for the stays. Often there'll just be a loop at the end of each wire that goes over the top of the mast. At the other end of the side stays, we have these chain plates and shackles which go onto those side attachment points. Now, if your boat does have adjustable chain plates like this, it's best to always undo the shackle at the bottom so you don't accidentally lose the position it was at previously. To raise the mast, put the side stays on first, grab the forestay with one hand, and simply put the mast into the step. As long as you hold onto the forestay with the other hand, the mast won't fall down. Some people like to put a red ribbon on the port stay to remind them of when they're on port tack. You can see here Simon has one on both stays. I guess he just likes a good laugh. There should be a saddle at the front of the boat for attaching the forestay. You want to put 2 or 3 loops in for a bit of purchase. And ideally you want to make it as tight as you physically can. Then lock it off with 3 half hitches. Next, attach the jib halyard to the head of the jib and the tack of the jib just inside the forestay. If your jib has hanks, you can twist them on now to the forestay. And pull the halyard to raise the jib. There'll be some form of cleat at the bottom of the mast. Sometimes there'll also be a trucker's hitch for a bit of extra purchase. Now, it's good practice to always raise the jib first, so you get a good understanding of which way the wind's blowing before you raise the mainsail. But if it's really windy, or if you have small kids around, sometimes it's good to lower it again afterwards, just to keep the noise down a bit. Next, we attach the jib sheets. I'm being a bit lazy here and just using an overhand knot. The jib sheets need to go through the fair leads and then through the cleat. And then if you're sailing with the crew, you can put in a figure-of-8 stop knot. If you haven't got a crew, then it's best to tie the ends of the jib sheets together to form a continuous loop. That way you can always reach the jib sheet even if you're hiking out. You can also use the same trick if your crew is a small child and you want to make sure you can release the jib in a hurry. Now you ideally want the jib quite low over the deck. Some people will set it a bit higher to give themselves a better view, but you certainly don't want the foot of the jib to be anywhere near as high as the mainsail. Next we need to thread the luff of the mainsail onto the yard. There will be a groove in the yard which should be just wide enough to take the bolt rope off the luff. This boat has a soft shackle at the top. This is one place where if you use a knot, you want to make sure you really know how to tie a knot. Next we put the jaws of the yard around the mast and we use a bit of bungee to keep them close together. Now I've actually got this wrong because I've got part of the bungee behind the mast and part of the bungee in front of it. It should all be forward of the mast. Next we need to attach the main halyard to the yard. There are a few different ways of doing this, but the key thing is you want to be able to get the yard as close to vertical against the mast as possible. So here you can see there's a pin inside a slot that will take a loop of rope and it'll get quite close to the mast when it's upright. And now I'm just fixing the mistake I made earlier with the bungee. Next we attach the boom to the mast. And the clue to the Outhaul. So you can see this boat here has a shackle which goes onto the clue. Notice in that video, you can see there's a yellow loop that's holding the clue of the sail down onto the boom. Now that actually went missing the next time we tried filming this, and you can see the problem here. This is actually a really common problem. If there isn't a loop to hold the clue down against the boom, then the boom is going to be way too low. Next, you're going to need a bit of lacing along the bottom of the luff of the mainsail. Unless you're really tall, you probably need to lower the yard just a little bit so you can reach the top holes. Now you don't want the luff to be tight against the mast, you just want it to be roughly parallel all the way down from the yard. And finally we attach the downhaul or cunningham to the tack of the mainsail. Now you notice that we did this last. It's a common mistake. If you do that first, you'll never be able to get the yard high enough. So it has to be quite a big gap between the bottom of the mainsail and the boom. And finally we put the Vang on. Now this Vang's actually upside down on purpose. Simon does that so he can get it off faster if he has a large crew. Some boats will have the Vang down to the mast step and others will go down to the bottom of the boat. And now onto the main sheet. So there's two different ways to set up a main sheet on a mirror. You can either have aft sheeting or centre sheeting. This is set up for centre sheeting. So you can see it starts off on the boom, it'll go down, it'll go through here, through this pulley, up through this pulley. This bit here is important. There'll be something to stop it from dropping down too low. That's really just in case you have a jibe and it swings down and might hit your head and catch on your head, and that'll be comical. There'll be another turning block here. Now some people will actually sail shitting off the boom like this, which is fine, gives you more space. This boat's been set up with a ratchet block down the bottom. Make sure it clicks when you turn it in or it's backwards. That's it up. And then we'll just put a figure of 8 stop lock in here. So what I'm going to do here, it's good practice to make sure that the main sheet won't allow the boom to stay in a serious jibe. So I'm just going to put the stop knot about here, just so that if we do a jibe, suddenly it's not going to be banging on the stays. Okay. When you put the tiller on, make sure it's inside this bridle so it doesn't foul the main sheet. This is a really common mistake that you'll discover exactly on your very first tack. Also make sure there's something to hold the rudder down in the event of a capsize. So here you can see there's a little snell pin that will keep it locked in. Now the centreboard goes in that slot there for the centreboard. The big thing to remember here is that there's going to be a front which is slightly more curved and a rear which is slightly more tapered. The way you tell is that there'll be a bit of a cutout here at the front of the centreboard. So if you put Vang on, I'll put a Vang on here in this boat, it's a bit of a reminder that the cutout is designed to let the Vang part over the top of the centreboard. So if you ever notice the Vang cutting here, it's a sign you've got the centreboard backwards, which is a really common mistake to make. I'm not going to put it in right now because we're still on land, but that's how it goes. And there should always be some way of securing it. You can see down here there's a bit of a bungee to hold it down, and that can be tightened. Ideally you also want to make sure that there's something that stops it from floating away in the event of a capsize, so that you don't lose the centreboard. Finally we're going to close the buoyancy tanks. So check all the bungs are in first, and then these go on. Really important, make sure there's no stand to them, and then make sure that they're only finger tight, or you'll never get them out again. Right, so each of the buoyancy tanks here will have at least one bung, hopefully, so make sure you don't forget any of them. These are the most important part of a mirror. If you look at it, there's so much buoyancy here, it's almost like a small catamaran. So it means that even if there's a hole in the floor, the boat's not going to sink, it's going to float along properly, as long as your buoyancy tanks are good. So, thanks for watching. As I said at the start, every boat is going to be different, so don't be surprised if your boat is not quite the same as this one, but hopefully there was enough of general principles there and tips that you'll be able to get something out of it. And happy sailing!